today at InnSciD SP 2022. We are going to have the panel, the International Dimensions of Social Innovation, and this panel will be moderated by Dr. Amancio Jorge de Oliveira. He's the Deputy Director of Museu Paulista and Executive Coordinator of InnSciD SP. Dr. Amancio, please, the floor is all yours.
Thank you very much, Gabriela. Let's start this panel. The title of the panel is the International Dimension of Social Innovation. We have the honor for receiving in this panel Dr. Katrin Vohland, Director of and the Scientific Director of Natural History Museum at Vienna, Britta Thomsen, Copenhagen Business School, and Sarah Durcan, Science Gallery. The idea of the panel is to see the idea of innovation in a human science more in a broader sense. USP has created this year a new structure for innovation linked to rectory with linked to science and research, and invite the research and professor to think innovation in the perspective of human size. So this panel will be very interesting to tackle this issue, innovation in terms of social innovation. So it's a big pleasure for having this panel. I will start with Dr. Katrin. Thank you very much for attending this event. Please, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you very much for the invitation. I prepared some slides for you, and I know you're already discussing the whole week, so I hope I can contribute something from our perspective. I will introduce the museum ultra short, that you know what I'm talking about, and then I talk about my definition of social innovation and show some examples from the museum. So this is the museum, how it currently does not look like. It's also hot in Europe. We are a rather old museum, and we host about 30 million objects. They come from the archaeological area and from the nature science area, so it's insects and minerals. It's a rather large museum and it's a very imperial museum. We also a research institute, so most of 60 of the 300 persons employed in the museum work in the area of research. And as a typical museum, we also have an exhibition for the public, where we have a permanent exhibition and where we have special exhibitions, and we also are running a science communication program. So I think that is a bit typical for all of museums. So social innovation for me is as the permanent transformation of social practices in behaviors and routines, which supports the SDGs. And of course, I have to admit this is some kind of normative idea, but this is the idea that the museum currently is moving to. I am leading the museum now since 2 years, and at the beginning I was asking my colleagues who we are and what we would like to be, so we jointly developed a vision. And I think for this morning there are some points interesting for us. So our vision really is to contribute to sustainable development in Austria, Europe, and the world. So at least this is our idea, not only to be important locally, but beyond. And what I will introduce to you is some ideas about participatory research by opening the collections and also by teaching science. So if you talk about participatory research, it's how it's called mainly in Europe, it's citizen science. So it's the idea that persons from the ordinary public who did not necessarily study biology or something else really contribute to science in very different areas. And there's currently a very deep also scientific debate where and in which stage of science projects citizens should contribute to really make a change or to really have some impact. And there's also a slightly normative idea that it would be best if the public already discusses the research question and is integrated in defining the agenda setting. And then in addition, the contributions also to innovations is by talking, by doing, by changing routines, by also contributing to research, which very often is in the area of sustainability. So we are dealing with biodiversity and we are dealing with long-term resources. So this is some bit more meta aspect of citizen science, but the idea that citizen science contributes to social innovation, not only by the results, the scientific results, and by increasing data and knowledge, but also by changing the routines and by the relationships between the public and their problems and the scientists. Another area where we think we can make a contribution also to social innovation is by opening our collections. For this, we developed an open science strategy for the museum and with the museum, and opening the collections has a lot of dimensions. It's on one hand to show what we already have in our collections, make some kind of digital inventory. But for some of our objects, it would be very helpful if we also have some 3D or 2D digitalizations. And what we really would like to do is not only to integrate other European partners, but to also support the global research community. Just for instance, the museum signed a European Manifesto for EU COVID research. So we are not redoing research on viruses, but we are doing research on bats. So we would like to offer our data, our insights also in the co-evolution. We have to understand better the co-evolution between viruses and zoonosis in general. So this is also dimensional. We have some, of course, technical innovation because the methodologies, if you look into the DNA methodology is changing, but it also has a link to social innovation. And of course, we're also discussing the vaccinations questions, and we can go back to for instance, here for some data from the collections. This is one example, but the idea is that we have a lot of more data linked to the objects in our collection if we open them up. And perhaps it's difficult to identify something which is only social innovation. Quite often you have a link between social, technical, and scientific innovation. As I said, we open the data, genomic data, for instance, you understand better co-evolution in objects. We have links to chemical data. There might be interesting to develop new pharmaceuticals, the distribution models, for instance, if we have species, tree species or others, if you think about climate change adaptation. So we see also opening our collections with the vision of opening data, where our data on the species, its distribution, and some other features we have is linked to data from other realms, from other people, from geography, from pharmacy, also helps to develop a more sustainable solution for different areas. And last not least, an example where we also would like to contribute to the sustainable development are our exhibitions. Our exhibition we just had is Best Before. So often you have printed on your food a date, and some people throw everything away. And we, in our exhibition, put a focus on food which is thrown away and which is a vast of energy and unnecessarily contributes to the CO2 print. So also with our exhibitions and also the talks and the programs around, we would like to motivate our own staff also, but also our visitors to change their consumption behavior. So this is also a little step towards become a bit more sustainable. And is looking internationally, we currently have an exhibition on the Brazilian-Austrian relationships, the history of 200 years. So here we not only show the history, we also show the beauty of Brazil, I need to say, but we also show the interrelations, for instance, with regard to soya or to other products which are imported to Europe, which are consumed here, and which impact the forest and finally also the climate in Brazil. Yeah, it's nice. So some conclusions which are linked to your guiding questions. International benefits, I very much see in this open linked data, what we can provide. And I also see we can learn mutually from each other, for instance, with the persons from Brazil, or we also have other international cooperations. And finally, we will support the global sustainability goals. And you raised another question, bottom up versus top down. I think you need both. From top down, you can set monetary incentives, you can give money for education, you have impact on wars, but you also need all the engaged individuals who really make it happen. So this, in short, my first input. Thank you very much for your attention, and of course, I hope you also come to Vienna to this exhibition.
Thanks a lot, Dr. Katrin. So you give the floor to Dr. Britta Thomsen. Please, you have the floor.
Hola, bom dia aqui de Lisboa. Good morning from Lisbon. First of all, I would like to thank you for inviting me to this very important panel of social innovation. My intervention will focus on the experiences on non-technological innovation. You have talked a lot about high-tech, but I would like to speak on non-technological innovation from my own country, Denmark, and I will define different types of innovation. In Denmark, we define social innovation as developing original responses to societal needs that are not sufficiently met by existing types of private or public services. And these responses are often developed, but not only, but often developed by non-commercial organizations and actors through creative processes with a strong element of initiative from below. And when we talk about from below, it can be participants, it can be other actors and users and different groups. Social innovation, as well as business innovations, occurs in a complex framework of structures and institutions that may be called a national system of innovation. And this can make it difficult to adapt to other national systems. In the European Union, there are huge differences of national understanding of innovation in general, but also in the tradition related to social innovation and the role that the social economy plays in each country's economy. I was elected to the European Parliament from 2004 to 2014, and I was a member of the Committee of Science and Technology. And I realized that the different countries indeed define innovation different, and most countries, they saw some innovation related to high technology and research institution, which was not in accordance with my experience from Denmark. So I thought today I will share some of the Danish experiences with different types of innovation that have a low impact of science and technology, but where the human factor or creativity is central. In Denmark, non-tech innovation has been part of the country's DNA and economic successes that we praise in our economic stories. And the best example is the famous Lego. All of you know the Lego toys for children that was created in the 1930s by a very innovative and very well-skilled carpenter. Because in Denmark, this time, 100 years ago and today, we invest very much in professionals, in professional skills. So we have highly qualified carpenters. We have not only high-tech engineer, because a high-tech engineer need highly skilled workers on the workplace to deal with. And this is why these kind of products have been developed. Another kind of type of non-technological innovation is what we define as user-driven innovation. User-driven innovation involves the users in how to design new products, services, or to improve the existing. It can, for instance, be patient in the healthcare sector or elderly people. For instance, in the stomach care area, there's a very good examples of improvement via cooperation of users and nurses. So it's not high level technology, but it has resulted in a global network for stomach care nurses. And here they discuss the product development and identify and prioritize users' needs. It's also a forum for evaluating new concepts and ensuring that the products meet these needs. So it's a very important product for people with stomach diseases, but it's constantly developed in a non-high technological area. Another example of non-technological is the way we have in Denmark achieved that elderly people are participating in the digital economy, in the digital society, in the smart city, by establishing a cooperation between the NGOs of the elderly people, cooperating with the customers, and in that way they have developed systems for how elderly people can learn how to participate in digital communication, and it's a huge success that should be imported to many countries, because it's getting everyone on board and not leaving people behind in the digital society just because they are old. Another very successful and important component is employee-driven innovation, which is very important for new products, services, and process improvements. It can be done by online suggestion boxes on the workplace, and where employees can both offer their ideas, but also comment and collaborate on the ideas submitted by the colleagues. But the precondition for employee-driven innovation is that there is small power distance in the workplace. There are Danish companies that have been in China, and they have been asking the workers to come in with their ideas, but because the Chinese are used to big power distances, they are afraid of coming with the ideas, and they are afraid of criticizing the engineers, which has meant a lot of expensive losses for the companies. So even that the salaries are 3 times higher in Denmark, they save money, because when the workers on the workplace are active in criticizing and coming up with their ideas, then it's become in the long way much cheaper. Also in the public sector, where it's needed with the social service to the citizens, public sector innovation is very important, and it is on the agenda of many governments to use the knowledge and ideas of the employees in innovation and development. For instance, in Norway, the government has stressed that the employee participation is done now in cooperation with the Norwegian Confederation of Trade Unions and the Norwegian Organization for Employers in the public sector to improve the innovation, the social innovation. Also, we see now a lot of new things coming up also from America, which is, for instance, social entrepreneurship. Traditionally, for instance, in the Nordic welfare state, we have built private and public sector, and we have not had this voluntary sector that we now see coming in from the US as a new dimension, because we need new initiatives if we want to keep the social service at its level now during this crisis we have been through. And also public sector is learning how to create new welfare solutions in cooperation between enterprises, voluntaries, NGOs, to create new ideas in the local areas and new solutions. So there are many new ways of improving social innovation in Europe, and we should see how national solution can become internationalized also with the global south. And it can be through smart city, it can be through building up new platforms that are extended from the national to the international level. And I expect that we will see that in the near future. So thank you very much for giving me the floor.
And thank you, Dr. Britta, for this inspiring conference lecture. So I pass the floor to Dr. Sara. The floor is yours.
Thank you. I'm just going to play this. So I work with Science Gallery International, and we are an organization that help develop science galleries around the world. So what is Science Gallery? It's a university network that brings together art and science and public engagement that is looking to break down the barriers between all of these disciplines. It is very much bringing together art and science, and we describe it as our mission as igniting creativity and discovery where science and art collide. And when we're thinking about the conditions for social innovation, really universities are such big drivers in that. But universities are, organizations, and we think of understanding of them. We're working with 21st century technologies with a 20th century mindset and 19th century institutions. So in a way, Science Gallery is this plugin that can help universities activate their third mission, their social mission. We describe it as this permeable space between the city and the university. So currently we have 8 university members across the world: University of Melbourne, Erasmus MC in Rotterdam, King's College in London, Technical University in Berlin, Trinity College here in Dublin, where Science Gallery originated. And Science Gallery International is a non-profit spin-out out of Trinity College Dublin, Michigan State University, Emory University, and then 3 institutions in Bengaluru in India, led by the Indian Institute of Science. Excuse me. So just to give you an example of the type of work that you can see at Science Gallery, here is a memory of a brain malformation. So we bring together all of these themes from very wide disciplines. So neuroscientists working with illusionists, blood specialists working with vampire experts, really drawing together the humanities, the sciences, technology, engineering, maths, etc. And this is aimed primarily at 15 to 25-year-olds, really those young people who are thinking about the future. And it's very much a space for conversation where you can have participative experiences that surprise and delight and provoke those conversations, because that kind of scientific citizenry and artistic knowledge is incredibly important for young people to drive innovation and to feel part of society and to be able to tease out the ethical frameworks in which social and technological innovation is happening. And I wanted to share with you one example from the University of Melbourne, just to give you an idea of the type of work in social innovation that's happening right across the network. And we very much focus on bringing these universities together, exchanging ideas between young people, but also between researchers and scientists, the type of work that's developed within Science Gallery across all of its themes. And this is the new innovation district. It's called Melbourne Connects, and it's on the site of the Old Women's Hospital in Melbourne in Australia. And as you can see, the corner of this is occupied by Science Gallery, and Science Gallery activates the entire building, the fab labs, the engineering departments, all of the social innovation that's happening there as well. And you can possibly see the entrances there just on the left, the bottom left of the photograph. And here you have Dr. Niels Wouter, who's the head of research, and Susie Anderson, who's the digital experiences manager. And you can see these glass bricks in the building, and there's over 200 screens built into the brickwork, and they're all touch screens as well. And this was co-developed with the School of Computing and Information. It has won an International Media Architecture Award. And Susie was responsible in that for driving the First Peoples First Peoples led content for it. So it was programmed with work from across all of the university's collections, and very much a way for people to interact with the building and promote this interdisciplinary collective research, which took 3 years in development. And then these bricks were handmade and hand blown in Venice. So I'm just going to switch over my screen and, with your permission, show a very short video which will explain this more than I can.
Sure, go ahead.
Excuse me, I got my mouse to work. 1 second. So this is a video that explains a little about the videos.
The Digital Bricks is a quite innovative design project. 200 plus screens embedded in the brickwork of Melbourne Connect, and more specifically the main entrance to Science Gallery along Grattan Street. Screens are everywhere. We carry them with us as we go about our daily lives. We have phones, we have tablet computers, laptops and such. But screens are also increasingly present in public space. A screen can also be really intimate. It becomes really interesting when we translate that notion onto a facade of a building. How can we create intimacy with screens in a building or attached to a building? And what would that look like in practice?
The Digital Bricks media facade is unlike any content platform I've ever had to make content for before. What you see on the bricks might look like a video, but it's actually a composite of lots of still images that has been treated in a variety of ways. We want to use the technology to help people dive deeper into the exhibitions that take place inside Science Gallery.
Our glass bricks are handmade in Venice, but that process, simply because it's not sort of machine driven, it introduces a wide range of defects. So you're dealing with refraction, reflection, distortion in all sorts of ways, which at times we've noticed, especially during the night and in the evening, it creates these really interesting hologram-like effects where the content on the screens seems to pop out and seems to come out, and it actually performs right in front of you.
So just to say that I think encapsulates this role of Science Gallery in social innovation as this plugin for the university that creates exchanges right around the world. For example, most recently we had our Global Youth Symposium, bringing 500 young people from all of our locations together online to discuss climate change and what they can do. It was called Hot and Bothered. So again, this is a mechanism for which we can support other social innovation projects and other technological developments, both inside and outside the university, and also crucially bring that public engagement piece and help young people tease out these white hot issues that are affecting their lives right now. So I think I will leave it there and certainly look forward to your questions. Thank you.
Thanks a lot for this impressive presentation. So I'm going to open the floor for questions, and I will ask for students open the micro and make the question. It starts with Carlos Panetti, please. Carlos, please open your micro and make the question. And Carlos and Heina, do you want to make your question?
Hello, can you hear me now?
No, you're okay.
Oh, perfect. Yeah,
ahead,
okay.
please. Thank you.
So I have a question to Dr. Vohland. I work for the city of Krakow, the Department of Culture, but so I'm more aiming at the city diplomacy level here. But I would like to know if the city of Vienna somehow plays a role as an intermediate between the museum or other institutions, can be either scientific or cultural institutions, either through policy, funding programs, in this connecting, matchmaking with projects and initiatives, of course, from an internationalization perspective. That would be my question.
Thank you, Carlos.
Yeah.
If I may, you collect 3 questions and then pass the floor for to panels. Can be that way. So, Reina, can you?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead. Thank you.
Perfect. Thanks a lot to all of you for the very interesting interventions on all the different projects that you presented. I had a question in particular on the topic of opening scientific and educational resources. Katrin, you mentioned that the Natural History Museum in Vienna, you have a lot of relationship with different institutions and different entities in other regions, and you're developing this, you're going through the process of opening some of the collections that you have and doing some citizen science open projects as well. So I'm interested in your thought about contextualized openness, how the different institutions, depending on the region where they are and depending on the local realities, are actually adapting the opening process. So that was one of my questions, and the other one is, how do you think, and this goes through all the panelists, is how do you think that science diplomacy or innovation diplomacy can help promoting more of this initiative that you presented?
Thank you, Heina. The last one is Horacio. Please, Horacio.
Yes, so I'm going to read from what I wrote. So from the presentations, I see that there are various concepts that are intertwined and that have been addressed by the panelists. One of them is the international dimension of innovation, which is the title of the panel. Then there is also the social dimension of innovation, of technological innovation, and there is a third one, which is the social innovation per se, which is also in the title of the panel. I fail to understand the conceptual boundaries among them or between each one of the peers, which I feel are necessary to understand the interactions among them. So I was wondering if the panelists could comment on this and clarify these issues.
Thank you. So let's start with Katrin. Katrin, please.
Yeah, thank you very much. I start with the first question. So Vienna is an UN city, so it is very international because a lot of UN organizations are in the city. The city itself has a strategy, but it's less for science and social innovation, it's more for economy. And it also addresses very much the international area to develop Vienna much more in some kind of congress city also for scientists. So it's more this economic and slightly touristic perspective. They have a program also dealing with social innovation. There's also a long history in Vienna. It was about Vienna. There's a lot of buildings which are cheap for people. And for instance, we as a museum, we profited from a bicycle or some electro bicycle where we can talk about light pollution and go to the quarters of Vienna with where migrants living, which I said not to come to the inner city. So obviously there's some kind of social barrier of people coming. So this is part of social innovation education, and we got some money from the city of Vienna to go out there. If you look more for this international dimensions of projects, is another institutions, FFP, which is helping with this matchmaking also internationally, mainly with regards to the European Union, but also internationally if you look for research projects, there's some co-funding is needed. And that is perhaps also linked to the second question, opening the collections. Yeah, there are a lot of differences how to open collections. What does it mean? It's not only to have a database in the internet. Opening, in fact, has to mean more to provide you access. Sometimes also need to give support, to give some context, to give some tools. And yeah, there are a lot of dimensions also in the house itself. It's very differentiated. Some people look with the idea of open science, and others really would like to protect and feel that it is their own. So it's not only originally different; it's also different in the house. We are the biggest collection or nature collection-based institution in Austria, and for this we try to support smaller institutions which would like to open their collections also for nature conservation and other issues and do not have the means. So this is very shortly presented OSCA, Open Scientific Collections Austria. We tried to raise resources also from EU project, for instance, Skills for EOS, which we just want to have resources for capacity building to really support this process of opening, which has a cultural dimension, a technical dimension, and so on. And perhaps interesting for you as you're from Brazil, with regard to the international context, we signed a memorandum of understanding. We would like to have a bit more exchange of scientists between Brazil and Austria. And there already was an interesting program which was called Reflora, which dealt with the herbar, so with the botanical collections in a lot of countries, and Brazilian scientists had coming to Vienna and to other cities, and also scientists here from the museum, it was before my time, went to museums in Brazil, and they jointly digitized their collections, so they made photos and then annotated these collections and put them into a public database, Reflora. So this is an open database, and from all over the world you can access to this. And perhaps the last point, or the last point, science diplomacy. In fact, we believe that personal relationships are extremely important, independent who currently is governing the countries. But of course, you come to frontiers in the current war between, it's not only between Russia and the Ukraine, I think it was already bigger. And yeah, I will stop. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you. Professor Britta, please. The micro, please. The micro, Professor.
Thank you. Thank you. Obrigada. I think I will start with science diplomacy. I think it's very important that we link all the experiences that we have. And I can tell you that I'm very impressed by what you're doing on Brazil in human smart cities. I have been participating, as I'm a Portuguese speaker, I have been there various times to explain about the Danish digitalization of the public sector. I have been in what you call the smart city in Recife, Porto de Recife, and I think what they are doing there in social innovation via technology is so interesting that even it's more advanced than we have in the Nordic countries. And this could be something also for social inclusion, for solving social problems that you could explain to other people via social, science diplomacy. It's very interesting examples and very advanced examples that it's a part of the Brazilians human smart city. I think we could in this, my understanding of this panel was to focus on exactly this social innovation, and we should build up platforms where we could exchange different ideas, which is very easy now with the new technology, and there is a lot of projects going on in area, solving also social problems by digital means. So this should be part of the science diplomacy and not only high tech, because when you only do high tech and when you only invest all your money in high level people, like when you make Ciencia Sin Fronteiras, science without borders, and not invest in the people on the ground, then you get so many differences that there are no receivers for your fantastic high-tech projects, and they cannot interact with the normal population. So I think it's an important area to discuss. Thank you.
Let's make sure. I think you mentioned Porto Digital, right? Digital.
Yeah. Fantastic initiative.
Yeah. Thank you. So let's move to Christiane, please.
Yes, my question also goes to Ms. Thomsen. In this social innovation processes where you collect the responses from below, from the normal people, you still need some kind of a broker or somebody who carries the inputs that were collected, let's say to the higher level, to the, I don't know, governance level or institutional level, or in order to change something in the process or in some procedure or policy or whatever. What do you think from your experience of what you researched or participated, what is important to succeed in this transposition to the higher level, and who might be the right actors to do this? Are there always like politicians necessary that like the idea and kind of accompanies the process and then takes the results to the level where it can actually have an impact? Thanks.
Well,
thank you. Sorry, Professor Britta. Before listening you, I forget to listen to Professor Sara, Dr. Sara. So Sara, I'm so sorry. Can you?
That's no problem at all. I think Katrin and Britta covered the answers very well. I would just like to add particularly about science diplomacy and its role in promoting exchange and ideas around the world. Certainly with our network, we absolutely believe in exchange and conversations with and across different scientists, different artists around the world, and that we work to be able to bring them together and even conduct their research in different ways with the public, because they're very much more aware of that public engagement. And even the importance in policy development as well. And we've certainly seen that here, for example, with Trinity College, and how many people who are involved in Science Gallery were very much to the forefront in helping explain and bring the public on board with the things that were needed to do to manage the COVID pandemic. And also, say, for example, bringing the public into serious research that can be done by the university, for example, on motor neuron disease here in Dublin. And we've certainly had the privilege of sharing work between universities. For example, King's College London's exhibition Hooked, which is all about addiction and looking at the various aspects of addiction, not just in drug addiction, but social media addiction and so on, is now in the University of Emory. And I had the pleasure of being able to bring a piece from Science Gallery Dublin to USP to Sao Paulo a number of years ago, which was all to do with the idea of trauma. So all of these things of being spaces for conversations and this kind of democratization of science and exchange, and making it more relevant and connecting it in transdisciplinary ways and multidisciplinary ways is absolutely essential spaces for conversation and for taking action as well, because we are seeing particularly a young generation of people who want to be active in the world and want to have, as Christine was talking about there, that more political engagement in bringing it from the grassroots or from the bottom up right up to a policy level as well. I think universities have a huge role to play in all of that. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry again, Professor Britta. Now you have Flora. Thank you.
I have the floor. Thank you very much. I think that the policy level often is already defining what they want to go on, what they want to happen. Like I mentioned the example with the Norwegian government that wants social innovation in the public sector. But of course, it's and many things are also going on locally. But very often the problem is not reaching politicians. The problem is new idea. And I get this when I visited this Porto Digital in Recife. It was very interesting for me to see how they could solve problems for disabled people, for young people in the favelas, and a lot of areas, but we don't know. I'm sure if if the Brazilian embassy presented that in Denmark, and not only high tech with a science diplomacy, it would be very in demand. It would be something that the politician would like to see, and they would like to visit, because politicians, they very often don't understand science, but they understand concrete projects that solve concrete social problems. And there is also a need for that. And especially when you can, with digital means nowadays, solve many problems. I am, for instance, also myself an online speaker to Brazilian politicians about Danish digitalization, how they can get inspired by different ways we have done to digitalize the society and what are the benefits for that. And this is not science, but exchange of systems that promote more democracy, more efficiency, and so on.
Thank you. Luciana, you have the honor to make the last question. So Luciana, please.
Thank you very much, Professor Amancio. Thank you, Katrin, Britta, and Sarah, Dr. Katrin, Dr. Britta, and Dr. Sarah, for the wonderful presentations. And I would like to know a little bit more on the non-technological social innovation initiatives in the public sector in Denmark, or maybe in the period Dr. Britta stayed in the EU Parliament, especially regarding social services. And if you could share some good practice that may inspire other states' practices to attain the Sustainable Development Goals.
The question is moving to Dr. Britta. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. In Denmark, in Copenhagen, where I come from, now I live in Lisbon, but in Copenhagen, they have been awarded World Prize to be #1 in the green development, in the climate change development. And now the politicians start saying, we would also like to be #1 in the social sustainable development. And I think it's interesting that we in the Nordic countries, we had a very big public sector and a very big private sector, and we did not have very much NGO to take care of neither social problem nor many other things. And now we have started introducing social entrepreneurship, where young people, they are entrepreneurs. They are startups, not tech startup, but tech social startups, where they do new initiatives, where they invent new methods, then can be applied by the public sector, because the public sector is not that innovative. So we have started now to making private and imported that into the public sector. But we have a huge social sector, a huge sector that solves all problems for people. And this is a model of society that has been developed the last 50 years. It's healthcare, it's social policy, and here it's very important with new developments because we cannot afford such a big sector in the future. And it's in general in all of Europe. We have another problem than in Brazil. That is, we have majority of the people are getting older. So I think living expectancy in Europe is more or less 10 years older than in Brazil. And this costs a lot of money because older people, they are demanding more healthcare, and therefore we have to be more innovative. And this will put a pressure on the European welfare state to develop more social welfare. To develop new methods, because the taxpayers cannot continue to pay it as it is now.
Actually, we have one more question, and we have time. So please, Adriana.
Thank you very much. I'm Ariadna Garza from Mexico. I am very impressed by the efforts that Science Gallery is doing in order to produce innovative ideas in the interaction of science and art. And I was wondering, I would like to ask Sarah about what are the characteristics of the universities willing to participate in this kind of projects. Because I guess it must be a kind of profile to be able to participate. And also, I would like to know how difficult it is to put together scientists and artists together in order to evolve in the projects that you have been showing us. And I would like to know if there is a common problem that you have to be solved, considering these kind of interactions that you are producing. Thank you very much. Thank you very much to the organizers also.
Thank you very much for your question. Firstly, we're currently a network of 8 leading universities around the world, mostly in big cities, with universities who are seeking to change the way they interact with their public, but also looking, as I said, to break down those boundaries. Generally, they're looking for an innovation district as well, or as you are doing in USP, to bring the science and research together, but also to bring the humanities and arts, and recognizing that both the sciences and the arts are also creative practice, which goes to your second question. It's actually not that difficult to bring artists and sciences together, because they're both creative languages, and when you strip it back, the approaches are often the same. I think we've become very siloed in our approaches to technology, to politics, and so on, but when you bring them together and create the conditions, which is what we try to do in Science Gallery, you actually find out they have an awful lot more in common. And we've been doing this now since 2008 in Trinity College in Dublin. So it's worked so far. We've produced hundreds of public programs and research projects, some of which have toured the world, some of which have resulted in actual social innovation products as well, whether it's water filtering, or medical devices, those type of things as well. So we want to be a more expansive and inclusive network as well. That's somewhat of a challenge, in that there is a cost involved in being involved in Science Gallery. But for each location, it's a free entry, because we want it to be a space where people come and hang out and have those conversations. So it's not about teaching people about science. It's very much that kind of democratic platform for conversations. But yeah, generally we find scientists and artists like hanging out when you put them together with coffee and the right conditions. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Please, Katrin, you mentioned something about in the Brazil's independence exhibition over there. Could you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, sure. Just to add to the debate, I think it needs a place where this people from the different disciplines meet, and maybe it's also talking. Yeah, with regard to Brazil, September 7th is the Independence Day in Brazil, and we also talked with the Brazilian embassy and some scientists in Brazil, and what we want. In fact, we would like to have a closer scientific relationship and this personal exchange, because things happen between persons if people come to the collections and talk about science. So the Minister of Science and Technology from Brazil and also we signed a memorandum of understanding for exchange, but a memorandum not easily provides the resources. So that is something which currently is the side of the ministry or the government. But what we did here is to also show the scientific examples from Brazil, and for instance, how you can use such databases such as with For instance, we also show restoration projects or restoration projects, and these databases are interesting also for foresters and others to look into the features of the different trees or the other plants, how they can get along with the seed, so you can link the data from the databases and the species and the distribution to functional data. Just for instance, this is one idea. I don't know if anybody is in Vienna on September 7th. There will be also here another nice event in the museum with some Brazilian music. That's not just innovation, it's also fun. Does it answer your question?
CJ, yes, absolutely. Thank you very much. So I think you can conclude now with this brilliant panel, and I hope this is the first step of a long-term relationship and partnership. So thank you very much for attending these panels. And now I give the floor back to Gabriela to announce the next step of the meeting. So thank Professor Britta, Professor Katrin, and Sarah. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, what a brilliant panel discussing the international dimensions of social innovation. Now we are heading to a larger break